and welcome to Heart and Hand. Joining me this week are two of my very favourite guests. First of all, the Silver Fox himself, Mr. Ian Hogg.
Good evening, David.
And joining us from the Time Capsule Show on our network, and he's starting to get a few first team games as well. It's Martyn Ramsey. Good evening.
Evening, boys.
So, gentlemen, let's just head straight to the match on Saturday. Rangers taking on Dundee for the third time this season. Honours had been even up to this point. Rangers ran out 4-0 winners, but Martyn, I don't think that told the whole story.
No, Dundee aren't a great side, let's be very honest, especially up front. They created some worrying moments, and if we're thinking ahead to the weekend, they become even more worrying. The boy Moose up front, for example, seemed to do all the hard work, a lot of good movement, a lot of good control, but just couldn't finish. And yeah, it wasn't a 4-0 in any way, I don't think.
Hoggy?
Other than the fact that we scored 4 goals and they didn't score any.
And they didn't score any, yeah. Other than the fact that it was, but I know what you mean.
I mean, it was, I guess, literally a 4-0 game, but not really. Dundee spent what I thought was about a good half hour dominating the ball in the first half. All they did, predictably, was stick 3 men in the middle of the park against our 2. Sometimes aided and abetted our 2 by Kenny Miller and for Josh Windass. Some thought bizarrely, including me. And they played pretty triangles around us and dominated the ball. It felt as if at times in the first half it was only a matter of time before Dundee scored, and I think that's what the pivotal moment was in 35 minutes. Musa turns Ross McCrory inside out and aims for the top corner, fires it over the bar. Rangers got the park and scored what was a very good goal from Kenny Miller, with Murphy cutting in, as he likes to do, across the entire 18-yard line. Miller had an awful lot to do still, and fair play to him, he stuck at the bottom corner superbly well. But up to that point, you none of us, I don't think, would have been surprised, David, had Dundee taken the lead.
Kenny Miller announcement before the match that he was starting, I think, surprised a lot of people. I don't think many of us had predicted it in the lead up to the match, and he came in for the injured Josh Windass. Not a huge vote of confidence there for Jason Cummings, Martyn, or am I reading too much into it?
Maybe a wee bit. I mean, we talked before the game after we got over the shock of the announcement. It's just clear that Morelos and Cummings aren't a thing. They are not going to work together, or Murty doesn't seem to think they can work together unless it's Ayr United or a kind of lower level team. They don't seem to have that connection. They don't seem to have that chemistry. We can all play amateur psychologists. They don't seem to like each other. The body language doesn't appear to be that great either. So he's gone for something else that probably did work better, to be fair. And it's not Kenny Miller keeping Cummings out of the team, it's Morelos that keeps Cummings out of the team.
That's a fair point, and I also think that they haven't really looked as though they're a great partnership yet. The counter argument to that, of course, is that they haven't had a lot of minutes together, and that is fair enough. But again, I don't think that Graham Murty is seeing them combine brilliantly in training and then deciding, well, yeah, but I'm not going to play them on Saturday. I don't think that's what happened. And Kenny Miller, to be fair, came in and played reasonably well. I mean, he wasn't fantastic, he wasn't awful. He played well. It was a very Kenny Miller performance. He got his goal. He missed a significantly easier chance in the second half when he's presented with basically an open goal, but he does that Kenny finish where he sort of stabs into the ball, and instead of hitting it straight, it sort of goes into the turf a bit and then veers off in a direction that completely defies physics. Only he could do that, but it's not news, is it, exactly, Hoggy, to say that Kenny Miller far better when he doesn't have time to think about it.
Kenny Miller's always been Kenny Miller, all the way back to when he had hair and he looked like a 14-year-old when he signed for us. When Miller doesn't really have time to think, he scores. When he does have time to think, he doesn't. And I actually thought, bizarrely, Saturday's chances were almost the other way around, because his goal, he takes the ball in from Murphy, and he takes a couple of touches before he strikes it into the corner. I thought that was a very un-Kenny Miller-like finish, whereas the ball rebounds out to him with the open goal, and as you say, he stabs at it. So it was almost roles reversed, but a very Kenny Miller performance. Lots of huff, lots of puff. He got a goal. He contributed a little. I'd probably argue that defensively he contributed way more than Josh Windass.
That's not exactly difficult.
I think, to be fair, so did you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean it's not really Josh's strong suit, is it? And that's before anybody goes, you just don't like Josh Windass. I mean, no, we're aware of his qualities, absolutely, but nobody could turn around and say that he puts in a shift defensively. It just doesn't happen.
He's obviously not asked to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not put on him to do so. So no, whereas Kenny Miller will, of course, go back in. But that does lead me on to my next point. Start this for you, Martyn. Even with the more, shall we say, more willing runner in Kenny Miller, I thought that still, again, in midfield where we came up against a 3, our 2 struggled to really dominate the midfield, especially in the half an hour that Hoggy describes. Now, Greg Docherty had a very poor game. He was subbed after 60 minutes after giving the ball away yet again, and that's, don't people read into it that I'm criticising Greg Docherty, whatever. I think he's a really good player. I think he'll be a great signing for us. However, he had a poor game. There's no doubt about that. And part of it, I think, is the fact that with the 2, it just doesn't seem to work. Later on in the match, we shoved Graham Dorrans forward, and he looked significantly better than he did, for my money, when he was playing that holding role. And at the moment, I am a bit concerned, Martyn, at this regular giving up of the midfield, with the, you can only assume, with the thought being, well, yes, but it gives us more attacking threat and therefore we'll outscore them, and I'm not sure our defence is good enough to go into a match with that sort of opinion.
It's Groundhog Day, but it's not just Groundhog Day for Martyn in the past few months. This is the last 2 seasons, 3 managers. It's the same conversation. I want to play this formation. Yeah, but Mark, but Pedro, but Graham, you don't have the players to play it. Yeah, but we must play this formation. If I have to play a different formation, that means taking someone out. Yeah, well, that's literally the fucking point of your job, is to manage the resources to the optimum level. I mean, that's it. We don't have a number 10 that can do that role. I like 4-2-3-1 as a concept, but we don't have a player like that. We probably can't afford the player like that, in all honesty. And we have these conundrums all over the place. This isn't a Josh Windass bashing thing. Could he play off a striker? Yeah, he could. He's clearly got ability. So what does that leave us with? 4-4-2, you've still got the 2 in the middle. It's not enough. It's also not 1987. Could you go 3-5-2? Yeah, that means you can plug your midfield with Dorrans, McCrory, Docherty, or Holt, or Goss, or whoever you want in there. You can play Windass off a Morelos or whatever. Brilliant. But then you lose the jewels of our season, which is this combination between fullback and attacking forward. So we can't have it all, and it takes a manager to say, okay, for this particular game or these particular games, put that fucking bib on and sit down, because you're not playing in this particular game. But that's been a problem in different ways. All 3 managers were wedded to, Pedro maybe less so, but Warburton and Murray seem just completely wedded to this system, and that's it, completely ignoring that a very key part of it we just don't have. We should have enough to play between the middle. I would have hoped at home to Dundee, though. And you're right, Docherty just did a bad game. Suggestions he wasn't particularly well. Dorrans looked like he was blowing out his arse again early on, but remarkably, the more the game went on, the fitter he looked and the more able he looked. And I totally agree. Like last week, I think, when he goes forward, he's far more impressive. Therefore, it seems to me an absolute no-brainer for Sunday. He's got to be the 3rd man in that midfield, and you play with McCrory or Docherty or Goss or whatever other 2 you want in there.
Well, I mean, Goss, you and I were sitting together at the game, and we were speculating that he must have had relations with a family member of Graham Martyn, and it went badly wrong because he seems to have just been booted into touch. But then, of course, he came on with possibly a view to next weekend. I don't know.
I've no idea. I've no idea. I think what I said to you at the game was, the Miller thing, and then Halliday getting called for. I mean, it's not anything against those guys in particular. Last summer we had this meeting.
Yes.
It was kind of decided that squad wasn't good enough for the top division. Thanks for all your work you did in getting us back up there. Only a handful of you should remain. I thought we cleared this up. I thought the memos had been sent out, and still, in the latter parts of this season, Kenny Miller starting, and when we're in trouble in midfield, we're calling for Andy Halliday. I think that's the frustration, and there's been a lot of money obviously wasted this summer, which is why we're in this situation.
I will say that Andy Halliday played well. But
he was fine.
But then I immediately saw...
We know that's not the answer.
Yeah, well, that's it. Then I immediately saw people afterwards saying, should we pitch him in next week? No, we shouldn't. How much proof do you need that we shouldn't do that? But that's what's going to happen, unfortunately, when you have a squad that is as lopsided as ours is. And you're right, we've had to go back to these guys time after time, and it's a testament to their sticking power, these guys, that the Championship squad, that they are still there and still have proved to be more reliable, at least, than the other signings. It's still not the level that we need, but more reliable. Hoggy, the whole midfield conundrum, I think Martyn summed it up really well, but I feel a wee bit for the likes of Dorrans and Docherty when we go into this match and we know what's going to happen, and I'm sure they must know what's going to happen, which is that they have to work extremely hard just to kind of stand still, because there's always that extra man in the middle for the opposition. It becomes very difficult. Now, look, don't get me wrong, Martyn had a very good point. He nailed it, I think, with the yes, but we get so much happening on the flanks, and we do, and it's great. But then we cost ourselves, I think, in the centre of midfield so often, and we give away chances. And you're absolutely right for the one that you named earlier, the Musa one, where he's completely done all the hard work, and that's came through driving straight down the middle at us. And time and time again, Dundee got joy from doing just that.
How many times do we need to talk about it? I mean, before, I think, as Martyn said, Mark Warburton or Pedro Caixinha or Graham Murty gets it into their fucking head. The players that we have just now are not good enough to build formations around. Now, I get it. Typically at a football club, you would select your formation, your preferred formation, and you would build your team around that. Murty's inherited, let's face it, a car crash. And he's made some decent signings, or Mark Allen's made some decent signings, and he's trying to solidify this formation and pick the players to play it. And time and time and time again, what feels like every bastard week, we have this discussion. And should Docherty and Dorrans be good enough to dominate a midfield against a Dundee 3? Yes. Were they? No, because they had off days, and that's going to happen as footballers. But, we actually looked at our most solid, and I'm not going to suggest that Halliday and Goss and co are the answer, but we looked at our most solid when we had Halliday and Goss in there with Dorrans just in front of them. And lo and behold, Dorrans looked like a far superior footballer when playing in his natural position. I am, as you know, David, I'm tending to start to get quite animated about this, because it's costing us as fans time and time again. It's costing the team points, it's costing us frustration, and we're being disappointed almost, on a fairly regular basis because of it. Don't know about you guys, I am fucking sick of Rangers not learning lessons. And I'll hark back to my old pal Mark Warburton, who would say it and not do it. Pedro maybe didn't say it, certainly didn't do it. Graham Murty says it and, goes on about the talk is cheap and all this kind of stuff. And this probably sounds harsh, having won 4-0. But this is with one eye on next weekend. And if we genuinely haven't learnt those lessons going into next weekend, Graham Murty deserves to be booted up fucking Edmondson Drive when we inevitably get horsed.
Alfredo Morelos had an interesting afternoon. I think first half wasn't really involved much, to be fair, wasn't an awful lot of service to him. Second half he had a very interesting time of it, where he got a goal, he set up another one with some really excellent kind of on the ball thinking to get on the ball and winning the ball back, setting up a tap in. Then he got booked for diving, in a decision so bad that it made a mild-mannered manager. Although, did you hear what Graham Marty said about that?
Yes, that it was ridiculous.
Yes,
but he doesn't want to say anymore.
It nearly made me react in a way a Rangers manager shouldn't react, and I just thought this is such the equivalent of a guy who's sitting going, I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to my MP and the lead singer from Echo and the Bunnymen. It was, he's just not a raging type, is he, Graham Marty? He just doesn't have that in his locker. But
he certainly fits the stiff upper lip gent very well.
Yes, yeah, very much. You can imagine him just being very put out with this sort of thing and tutting loudly at it. But it was an awful decision, which we'll come to in a minute. But Martyn, Morelos is he's 4 seasons in one day at the moment with him. You're going to get good things, you're going to get very bad things. There was also he shushed the Copeland after his goal, which is never a good look. And he is a conundrum.
He seems a troubled young man. A lot going on in his head. Big move, a lot of change. Clearly frustrated. How many of the podders have said umpteen times, he seems to let things, miss chances, for example, miss chances in big games, really get to his head, really get him down. It's all out there for everyone to see. He's not. I don't imagine he'd be a good poker player. But Christ, did he need a 2-yard tap in on Saturday? Because we were saying, look, he's just going through the motions. He's running about a bit. He's chasing down. He's not really doing much. He knows he's away in the summer. Getting to that end at the stage of the season where, unless you're absolutely pushing for a title or whatever, we tend to run that wee bit slower. And then he gets a goal and he seems a lot more animated. And it's the team. It's the team in a nutshell sometimes, because that first half looked like, from an attacking perspective, it was all a kind of blurred focus.
It was
labelled. And then
once
that was sharpened in the second half, our first goal, then a second, all of a sudden, all these combinations that we saw 3 or 4 weeks ago, especially down the sides, that have been missing, now that we've had a couple of bad results, now they're back again. It's a lot of first touch stuff. The passes are weighted better. Everyone just plays with that freedom and fluency again, because finally, right, we're not going to lose. We're not going to lose at home.
It's that fragile confidence that we've spoken about with them, that they go up and down so quickly, that at 2-0 it was like somebody had flicked a switch. And that's why when people say it wasn't a 4-0 game, it wasn't until it was 2-0, if that makes sense. And I know it's a bit of a sort of a strange statement, but once they got 2-0 up and thought, right, that's us, we've won this game, they started playing some excellent stuff. And as you say, it was quicker, it was sharper, it was much more incisive. They were trusting a teammate. And you said to me on Saturday, and it's spot on, you can tell the mental state of our team by the weight of their passes. Because when they are in their shells, which we see, unfortunately, far too often, they are very timid, and the passes look like that, and they're under hit, or they're just, I wasn't wanting to put enough on it. Whereas when they were 2-0 up, they start trusting their teammates again. They start giving it to a teammate who might have a man on him, and with the confidence that teammate will be able to deal with it, which they then can. And in the end, we were completely running over the top of Dundee. It was chance after chance. But the problem with this side is, Hoggy, that it seems to be one bump, though, will reset that. One kind of knock will reset that, as we saw that the Celtic match led to a 2.5 week hangover.
Yeah, and look, some of these players are young. Some of these players wouldn't get in Rangers sides of the past. Some of them might get into the kind of early 80s side, right enough. But on the likes of Morelos, he is probably the best example of fragile confidence that's given the shot in the arm, because when he gets the goal, and it's a wonderful cross, incidentally, from Candeas for the goal. It was one of those Candeas crosses that I think, what's the stat? He does 2 of those every game.
Yeah.
Morelos scores, and then after that he's chasing them down. He's winning the ball off the last man for the fourth. He's, Martin, to your point around weight of pass, the weight of pass for Graham Dorrans to play in Candace for the fourth goal is superb. It's just the right thing at the right time. It was just night and day from the first half performance, where Greg Docherty, for me, probably sums up the first half performance. The amount of short passes in that timid fashion was unbelievable. No surprise when he got hooked, but it was just that kind of Jekyll and Hyde performance. And I do worry that we get turned over again for formation or set-up or whatever reasons, and we regress once more going into the last 5 games in the top flight. It's a conundrum. You know, at the end of the day, a big believer in play the hand that you've got, and at the minute we know these guys ain't good enough in the long run. I don't think that's a controversial statement. Some of them are, some of them won't be. We know their limitations, so play the hand that you're dealt. If that means packing the midfield and perhaps creating less chances to win the battle, so be it. You know, if it means we get a 0-0, so be it. But, you know, don't go in setting yourself up to fail. Because if we fail, confidence gets knocked. And if confidence gets knocked, we've seen what happens time and time again all through the season.
They're a team that needs a safety net in order to play the way they can. And that safety net being a 2-goal lead sometimes. Now, that's clearly not always possible. But looking forward, that safety net is 2 or 3 players who don't care what state a game is. They've got enough belief in themselves to be able to perform and express themselves regardless, and a manager who's very much of the same mind. And if that ever happened, if the money was there to make that happen, you'll see a difference in that, or the majority of that group that's there just now, because there's clearly talent there. But just by looking around the pitch going, all right, they play for us, we're fine, we've got that safety net. The safety net then becomes a group of pros, instead of having to get to a point in the game that they can finally just relax, especially at home.
I think that we talk a lot about leadership, and it's one of these hard to define qualities. Leadership isn't shouting and bawling, I think, all the time. Leadership is about, as you say, being able to just get on calmly with your game and inspire those around you, because they can look at them and say, it's okay, you know, I just need to look at him as an example, he knows what he's doing. And we don't have enough of those players. We've got players who play singularly, and by that I mean a guy like Alves, who's very professional, who goes out and he does his job and he comes in and doesn't necessarily look like the result is entirely a weekend ruiner for him. And I think we need more of the players who do that. But that's, you know, not to suggest that we just sign guys who run about shouting a lot, because that's not what it is either. It's about guys who can deliver a level of performance that's consistent, who don't get knocked off track by a disappointment, who are able to rally the rest of the team and to get their kind of solipsism put away and stop any navel gazing, which this team, I think, at times are very, very prone to, and occasionally feeling sorry for themselves. And the Kilmarnock performance a couple of weeks ago was the absolute perfect example of that, of a team that just went out there and felt a bit sorry for themselves, and then when it happened, it went a bit Kevin the Teenager that afternoon.
Yeah, do you know, one of the best examples I can use of leadership in football, David, would be Graham Souness. Now, not suggesting for a second we have a Graham Souness, because we bloody well don't, but leadership in the park's about booting folk in the balls when they need it. It's about arm round the shoulder, metaphorically, when they need it. It's about being the manager on the park, if you like. It's also about helping your teammates on the park. There was the old story about Graham Souness playing for Scotland when Arthur Albison made a mistake, and straight away Graham Souness is, the ball's back in play and Souness is right beside him, effectively giving him a short pass, taking the short pass back, just making sure he's getting the touches of the ball that's finding the man to up his confidence again. We have no one like that just now that's willing just to say, I'll do it. I'm the guy on the park. Probably on Saturday with a an exception of Kenny Miller, but we know that Kenny Miller's not that leader. I think he's too selfish to be that leader. That's the key element, or the first key element, that we are absolutely missing.
2 refereeing decisions which drew a lot of attention. The first one being a tackle by Bruno Alves not long after he came on, where he took down the encroaching Dundee player. Very professional foul, incidentally, and I'm not going to be upset at him for that. It needed doing, and he got a yellow card, which I thought at the game was fair enough. People immediately afterwards told me it was in front of me, it was potentially a red card. Having seen it, I think you could go either way on it. I think you could. It would depend how you want to assess it. Did we get away with one there, Martyn, or was it a case of the ref was right to err on the side of caution?
It's an orange, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's when you get it, I don't think you can complain too much. And if a ref is trying to just keep the game flowing, we'll maybe just show a wee bit more leniency. But you're right, regardless, the tackle had to be made.
And again, that stems from the lack of midfield, to belabor the point for a minute.
Right, just bombed right at us.
And Dundee continually did that. And as you say, they're not a great side, and that is very frustrating that it happened. But, Alves, as I say, very professional player. He did what a professional player should do, and took the guy out, and the game was sort of on the knife edge. Hoggy, later on, game's done by this stage, 3-0. Alfredo Morelos streaks through, rounds the keeper, 2 of them collide, and the referee books him for it, claiming it was a dive awards free kick to Dundee. Rangers at the time were absolutely raging. I'm a great one for players' reaction, and Morelos was going nuts, as was James Tavernier, who went as captain and remonstrated with the referee, I think trying to put the point across. Now, the referee isn't going to change his mind, but the referee indicates that there's no contact. That clearly didn't happen, as the Dundee keeper had to go off injured as his nose was smashed. So there clearly was contact of some sort. You could argue that Morelos was looking for it, but for the referee to claim that he saw there was no contact, I found ludicrous.
So on the, is it a penalty? I think yes. Whether Morelos is looking for it or not, I don't think it's the issue. The keeper, with his face, takes Morelos out. The keeper, there's got to be culpability on the goalkeeper's side. And incidentally, I hope he gets better soon and all the rest of it. But there's got to be culpability there, that the keeper comes rushing out and goes sliding along a wet turf at Morelos trying to get the ball. He misses the ball, and so it doesn't matter whether Morelos is looking for it or not. He takes his legs, albeit with his face. So it's a penalty kick. For the referee then to say it's not a penalty and it's a booking because there was no contact and therefore it's a dive is just pathetic. Utterly, startlingly pathetic. Because all he's got to do is look at the goalkeeper, who is spitting teeth and blood at this point. At that point, what does he think the keeper's actually? Has he headed the ground? So you said there, he's not going to change his mind. Do you know what? To not look like a dick, he fucking well should change his mind. It's what he could do is say, actually, that's not a dive. I got that wrong, but it's not a penalty because you were looking for it. People might have accepted that, but it's almost that kind of double whammy of it's not a penalty. It is. It's a booking for diving without contact. That's ludicrous. It's back to that old, we talked about it, I think, last week. The double whammy of the kind of double dual wrong decision is just nuts. Now, Murty did his stiff upper lip, it's ridiculous, but I'm not going to say any more routine. Not only is it ridiculous, it is fucking pathetic. And I hope, and I haven't read the news, so forgive me, Rangers can and should bloody well appeal this, because you can appeal for bookings for simulation. I don't know if they have.
I believe they have. I know that both Mark Allen and Graham Murty approached the referee after the match. They weren't happy with the explanation given and decided that they would appeal it. Martin, Hoggy touched on a point there that I do think is quite interesting, which is I think that as fans there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the rules, which is furthered by pundits. I've heard Chris Sutton say this quite a lot because he's a fucking idiot who doesn't know the rules of the sport. He will say things like, well, if the ref hasn't given a foul there, why isn't he booking him? Whereas, of course, it's not automatic. You don't have to do that. There can be contact and it not be a foul. It doesn't mean it's a booking. I get the impression our referees either have decided not to kind of bother with that rule, or they feel under so much pressure that on that incident, I think it is legit for the ref not to give a penalty, by the way. I thought it was a penalty, but I can see why a ref wouldn't give it. It's a perfectly understandable decision to say it's not a penalty, but it's not a booking. And I wonder if it's a case of, is the referee aware of that, or is he influenced by the fact of, oh, they'll all be expecting me to give one or the other here?
I'm not sure. I mean, we're kind of jumping into someone's mind a wee bit, but I need to look at it again just to see the reaction time. But from memory, it was pretty quick. And maybe that's the problem, that he's jumped to that conclusion. I was sitting beside you, David. I thought he dived from his body shape and everything else. Clearly that's not the case. But if that's what he's thought, and immediately decided that's a dive, I'm going to do that, instead of going over to speak to Morelos and noticing that a guy's nose was in about 3 places, and okay, that's clearly not the situation. Just take a few seconds.
Walk up to it, don't sprint. There's no need for a sprint. The game's 3-0, it's done. You're absolutely right. The best referees in that instance are walking up, talking to their linesman to see if he's got anything to offer, making their mind up. And as he'd done that, as you say, he will notice the fact that this poor cunt's nose is spread right along the width of the Copeland and go, well, clearly there was contact there, and then make his decision. But you're right, he's sprinting up with the card in his hand, and that is, I think, indicative of a referee that either doesn't have the confidence in his ability to do that, or just feels he's got to jump in to kind of retain control.
I think it's just a natural reaction, which again is a professional failing. You need to be cool. And again, the game's not exactly in the balance. It's not been a dirty game that you're going, God, I need to keep the powder keg kind of dry here. He's just reacted, and you're absolutely right. There was an opportunity there to assess the situation and see that the guy had 3 noses and say, right, we'll be absolutely fine here, and probably come to the conclusion, David, that he's maybe played for it, he's put the leg in. It's neither, and we just move on with the game. The point, I guess, that's of more interest to me is why, when he must see it, and clearly there's a lot of attention about the keeper to say, okay, I'll change my mind, I'll rescind it. But referees don't do that, and I don't know if it's the type of person who wants to be a referee is not the type of person to ever back down. Sorry, Cam.
No, I agree. And when you said there it's a natural reaction, I did want to kind of jump in and say a natural reaction to do you want to be a referee is no. So I'm not quite sure we can trust the type of people who are willing to do so in terms of their natural reaction. Rangers were absolutely fizzing about it, Hoggy, and an appeal did seem to be the sensible way to go on it, because these are the kind of decisions that do frustrate people, because I think that, sorry to say, well, we want to clamp down on diving, I get it, but you've got to be consistent in the way you apply it rather than just looking for cheap headlines.
We've had some dives this season. You know, every team has players that have dived. I'm thinking probably one of the most obvious ones was, sorry for all you Josh Windass lovers, but Josh Windass at Pittodrie, which was a dive and a booking all day long. If our players are diving and they're caught, I want, book them, fine. But, the key question the referee has to ask himself at that point is, Rangers are 3-0 up. Morelos is by the goalkeeper. The ball's not racing out of play. He gets the ball, he rolls it into the net. Why would he go down?
Yeah.
And it's that lack of thought coupled with the speed of, I've got to make a decision, which is just a nonsense. And I'm glad we've appealed. because it's those types of bookings when you're so close to the end of the season that end up ruling your players out of matches, which again is just an utter nonsense. So assuming that we have appealed, it'll be very, very interesting to see what the decision is from the SFA.
So Rangers run out, as I say, 4-0 winners, Martin. An uneven display, I think, is a fair way to put it. Are we in any way confident that we will see a three-man midfield, or will we basically see the team that started at the weekend with maybe, if another defender gets fit, i.e. Bates, McCrory, maybe going into midfield?
I think you've got to presume that Miller will play. What's he done to suggest that he is flexible for the task at hand? And he's on his way out, so why not stick to your guns? And I believe in this formation, and I don't expect changes.
It's a wee bit depressing. Hoggy?
We've seen from Graham Murty a likeable guy, and I think we would all appreciate his efforts of stepping in twice, and I think being treated pretty badly by the board, it has to be said. But what we've seen from him is a guy that it feels a bit one-trick pony-ish, a guy that either won't change or probably more so can't change. It's so early in his kind of managerial infancy. I fully expect two in the midfield with effectively a front four, if you like, and I think the outcome of that therefore has a certain depressing inevitability about it. Of course, I hope that's not the case. I hope beyond hope. Come Saturday night, I'll probably be battle fever. I'll be on, but as at time of recording, it feels a little depressing.
Sorry, David. Just when the Kenny Miller news broke up on Saturday, after the for fuck's sakes, blah blah blah, one of the other first things that we said was he's playing next Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was to run that out, which means he's not going to, whether he does move McCrory into midfield potentially, I don't know, but then who drops out? Does Doherty drop out on the basis of a couple of kind of poor shows? But the structure's not going to change, I don't think.
Yeah,
and it's going to be Miller doing that role.
And it's really the structure that we would need to change, I think, to get the benefit of it. But no, I think it'll be the same. I think it'll be 4-2-3-1, and it'll just depend on whether Josh Van Das makes it or not as to whether Kenny Miller plays, I think. But time will tell. I've been wrong before. That doesn't happen often, but I do acknowledge when it does. Now, season ticket renewal letters have gone out. The season ticket renewal, if you're like me and you're on the auto renewal, is already done. A wonderful thing for lazy bastards like me. But with it comes Dave King's statement on how things are going, the cover letter type thing. And I wanted to pick out this passage that I found quite interesting. However, on the managerial front, I emphasise that the board fully recognises the need for sustained stability in this area of the club. Whoever is appointed must be able to meet the unique challenges of managing Rangers and ensuring immediate success. It is a priority that we commence next season with the best appointment we can make and that we move forward rapidly. Rangers is synonymous with winning, and I want to repeat my commitment that neither I nor any of the other directors will consider our work complete until Rangers has been restored to the top of our game. Right, first things first, it's not Rangers has and Rangers is, it's have and are. Dave, don't do this Americanisation thing, I don't like it. But secondly, more importantly, that, Martin, to me suggests that it's not, definitely isn't going to be Graham Murty. Am I reading it wrongly, or I think, is that an accurate conclusion to draw?
That it's not definitely going to be Graham Murty. I mean, if it was going to be Graham Murty, I think that would be announced by now. I think he's being kind to him and polite, given that Murty has now twice walked into a job that I don't think he feels he's entirely comfortable doing, and it's honouring that service, I guess, by just kind of framing it in a way that says, "Don't worry, there'll be someone else in next summer." I read the first sentence and immediately shat my pants when it says
on the managerial front, I emphasise that the board fully recognise the need for sustained stability in this area of the club. At that point, I kind of took a pause and went, "Oh Jesus!" And then I read the rest and concur. Yeah, it sounds as if Murty's on his way. I did have a chuckle. I did have a chuckle when it talks about it's a priority and moving forward rapidly. That this board is not really synonymous with moving rapidly when it comes to managers. Let's face it. But I genuinely hope this is the case. You know, let's try and be the best Rangers we can possibly be at this point in time. That's all I ask for.
I think that there have been rumours for a few weeks, and I think that it's been speculated quite widely by us on the site and whatnot that Graeme Murty is aware that he's not getting the job full time. And I think that, again, as Martyn said earlier, you can then start to look for signs of that, and you run the risk of confirmation bias. So it could be a case, and I'd be the first to admit it, that I'm looking at that statement with a kind of presupposed outcome in my mind and going, well, yeah, look, it supports my claim. Something we see in the world quite a lot these days. But a lot of rumours circulating Ibrox on Saturday, social media has mentioned it, about Frank de Boer coming in as manager, and that one's been a bit up and down because he was obviously mentioned and will be mentioned as an ex-player and a big name and currently available. How would you feel if it was someone like Frank de Boer, Martyn, or is that a case of saying he's a project manager, that's not right for what we need?
Mixed emotions. Clearly there's something there. You don't do what he did in Holland without that. There is a lot of gravitas there as well. Go back to what I said earlier about the current squad just needing a few figures to absolutely believe in. I'm a wee bit nervous about him because of his last two appointments. I think I've read a few people saying the same thing. However, what exactly are we nervous about? Is there a manager out there that can win us the league next year that we can afford and include de Boer in that? I don't think so, if we're being completely honest. So is this a longer term project, or if you want to be kind of Tommy Burns obsessed, is it about stopping Celtic getting to a number, which for many people it is? Right, if that's it, then fine. That means you are talking about a 3-year project. You are talking about a project manager, and unless he starts the way he started at Crystal Palace with like 7 defeats out of 7 and no goals, which was clearly untenable, whomever comes in this summer, the board have to show a lot more bottle in terms of that longer vision. And when people lose their shit because we lose games that Rangers teams have always lost, by the way, they need to stand by, or otherwise we just never get any traction. It's just continuing to start and stop. So if it really is a project manager, then that fits the deal then. We're looking to try and get back there in a reasonable amount of time. That isn't one season, so we need to be prepared for that. It would be exciting, but my big fear would be that he might not hit the ground absolutely running because he want to do things his way, and that would be again another change, another managerial philosophy, outlook, whatever you want to call it. That really starts with 9 wins out of 9, you know.
Hoggy, I'm not sure I see a manager that can come in and just immediately get success. I'm not sure I see one. I think if you're going to bring in a manager with the gap being what it is, then he's going to need a minimum 2 years at least to get the club to where we want it to be. So from that point of view, I understand where Martyn's coming from, but I worry that what colours this, because nothing's done in a vacuum, I wonder what colours this is the fact that in an ideal world you hire a new manager and you say, well, he's got 2 years to put everything together, but it's all coloured by the last few seasons, and added into the fact that we did hire somebody who we were told was a project manager we'd be allowed to build, but was so obviously a terrible decision that the board were compelled to act. I don't think that the board would have quite that milestone in terms of the way Kashina did, because when Kashina arrived, nobody wanted him. They weren't that impressed by him. When he did badly, he wasn't going to have any defenders, whereas at least with De Boer there is at least a track record to cling on to to suggest, well, okay, if we give him time, he can do something. There wasn't that with Pedro.
No, there's not, and I think with Pedro, we'll go back to thoroughly likeable chap. So we all wanted him to succeed, but it was absolutely evident that he wasn't going to. He was fifth in the Qatari League, for God's sake. So at least if it's a De Boer, look, any appointment's going to come with an element of risk, and different risk at that. If we went back to the Walter Smith well again, age 70, that comes with a different type of risk. Yeah, very, very short termism. If it doesn't work, what do we do next? Does he have to have a successor in place straight away? So on, so on. It's a very different level of risk to De Boer, who's had success at Ajax and very good success. Went to what I consider to be a bit of a train wreck in Inter Milan and was a train wreck. Went to Crystal Palace, and it was the type of team that he wants to build ain't going to work at a Crystal Palace who are going to be in a dogfight. I think that's quite evident. So therefore the risk is he's doing it his way and will not bend and will not flex. What I will say about a successor, I would like to think that if Rangers have made the decision that Graham Murty is not the man for the job, and we all think that's the case, that Rangers are sounding out people now, that we've got a short list now, and we've potentially made the decision now, so that the likes of a Frank de Boer already knows, and therefore behind the scenes he's working on his targets and so on and so on. What I really, irrespective of who the manager's going to be, David, my biggest fear in all this, apart from we get to September and say, oh shit, turns out it was Graham Murty all the time, is that we get to the European qualifiers with nobody in place, with no signings in place, and we try and limp through them like we did last season, because that's not going to do anyone any favours.
Martin, where I think is an interesting juxtaposition is in the fact that for a number of Rangers fans, I don't think it's unfair to say that, for a number of Rangers fans, they don't fancy De Boer for some of the reasons that we've mentioned earlier. And yet, the reality of the situation is that given where we play, our current financial situation, etc., if Rangers did get Frank De Boer, it would be a coup. And it's interesting and a little kind of strange and revealing that when you look at that, for some fans they would be, I don't want him, look at his last two jobs kind of thing, whereas if you were out with Scotland and not a Rangers supporter, you would look at that and say, oh, they'd be lucky to get him. It's an odd situation.
Yeah, it doesn't compute. I think you can have reservations, but if you look at our recent track record of managers in the last 3 that we've had, 4 if you include McCoist, this is a different fucking sport.
Yeah.
So I'm not. That's just Rangers. We have difficulty, especially those of our age, equating, just really adjusting to even where Scottish football is. Never mind where Rangers are. I've had people dismiss the idea, not even possible, or Rafa Benitez, but just dismissing that as no way I wouldn't touch him with a basketball. This is the stage we're at. We're dismissing people that won Champions Leagues and La Ligas and everything else. Following football is not good for your health.
No, I think you might be onto something there. And speaking of which, a club not renowned for having a good effect on people's health are the unfortunates across the city, who we don't like to talk about them particularly, but they can win the league in their next fixture, and that has led to some speculation that when the fixtures come out, the Old Firm match will not be the first one because Celtic can win the title. And their manager, Brendan Rodgers, he suggested that was an absolute sin for Celtic. It was a real shame that they can't do that, and it's a sad reflection on Scottish society that they can't do this, and any other league in the world would be desperate to try and arrange something like this, but here we are shying away from it. Hoggy, could some cunt send him the memo telling him why we can't have last day title deciders between the Old Firm?
Better still, why don't we gift them a Patreon subscription to Heart and Hand and send them the link to the watch-along game of May 1999 when those daft cunts were throwing themselves off the top tier. That's why St Brendan of the Clyde Tunnel, we can't have Old Firm title deciders. Try looking at your own fucking backyard first.
This is why we can't have nice things, Martin, because of their behaviour that day. I mean, £78 worth of coins thrown onto the park at the referee and Rangers players, one of which, of course, infamously hit Hugh Dallas. Hugh Dallas's house, this gets downplayed considerably, was then smashed up that evening by a Celtic supporter who was allowed by the club to keep his season ticket, incidentally. It's the most Celtic thing ever, isn't it? The fact that because of their poor behaviour, something can't take place, and they then feel put out about that.
Yeah, you can send them the link to the Time Capsule episode as well. Other shows are available. He knows fine well. He doesn't need educated on it. He's playing. He's just stoking the fires, having a bit of fun. But in the knowledge that not one journalist, not one member of the press corps at a conference is going to say, well, you know why, don't you? And turn the tables back. He knows fine well the water he's swimming in, and he's just splashing around. He's just having fun.
Yeah, it's a bit surprised though that you think he can tell the difference when he allegedly doesn't know the difference between a penis and a vagina. But that's another thing to discuss another day. Okie doke then, folks. That's pretty much it from us here at Heart and Hand this week. Just to let you know, if you do want to hear more from the boys involved and myself, there are loads and loads of shows, at least 3 a day, go up on the Heart and Hand Patreon site, including Martin's rather excellent Time Capsule, which this week, Martin, a Soonest special.
Soonest special dropped yesterday on the anniversary of the 8th of April and his arrival, and one of my guests was Hoggy, the other one was Jeff Holmes, the Rangers author, who was actually there, leaving Carol Smiley behind and going to meet Soonest on his first day. And tomorrow we'll be looking at the 2002 Scottish Cup final, and the same outcome on Sunday would be lovely.
Hoggy, you're a middle-aged man and well-known sex pest. Carol Smiley must rock your world.
Even today, I think, yes.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Who are we kidding?
I've got a pulse.
Quite frankly. But you can visit the site and get that. It's patreon.com/Heart and Hand. Tons of new content, $1.99 per month. Please come along and have a look. Okie doke then, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. I'd just like to thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers. To thank my guest today, Mr. Martin Ramsey.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure as always.
Mr. Ian Hogg.
Likewise, pleasure, David, and good job, Martin.
Remember, you can support the show by purchasing a t-shirt with the catchy slogan, buy a fucking t-shirt, by visiting heartandhand.co.uk. If you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. I don't steal blue pounds, I only beg for them. Thank you very much for listening. I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Cheers, bye.